Oh my god, this deck. Hello everyone, it's Silvia. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to have a look at a few decks that really surprised me this month. So I don't know if this will resonate with any of you, but as a tarot collector, I think that I find myself very often making a very specific kind of mistake, and I keep on repeating over and over again. It is true that I've collected tarot and oracle decks for a few decades already, and I think that this is no justification, but it's kind of something that I expected would happen. I think I've seen it all. That's my main mistake. I think when someone asks me what is something that you would love to change about yourself in regards to collecting tarot, I think that I've seen it all. I think that when we collect tarot, and we're always, even when we don't specifically buy a deck, but we do some research on it and we check it out, and we go on Instagram and on TikTok and on Facebook and on the website of the deck, for example, and we check out all of the images that we can. I think that the mistake that I keep on making is that I try and find for some signs that I think I recognize, and then if I can compare it to a deck that I already have, then I will not buy it because I think that I already have it. And I think that all of the vibes that that deck can give me, I somehow already know. That is a huge mistake. That is a huge mistake, but because at the end of the day, first of all, you cannot see all of the images of the deck unless you look at the walkthrough, but in many cases, even a walkthrough would not give you the tactile sensation that a deck gives you when you have it in your own hands. And many of the vibes that you get from a deck also come from reading with the deck, reading for yourself, reading for others if you do that in your practice. So there's a lot of surprises, and if I had a resolution for this year, it would be to be more open-minded in trying out decks that I would usually bypass simply because I think that I've seen them already. So one deck that really surprised me was the Oracle of the Vampire Fae, and this was one of those decks that really showed me how wrong I was in thinking that I'd already seen this deck somehow. So this is by Tess Whitehurst, fantastic writer, and the artwork is by Melanie Delon, I don't know whether she's French. This has been released by Blue Angel a couple of months ago in Australia, but I do believe that it's available worldwide, and it's an amazing deck. So I bought it because back then I was doing a deck study, or rather a vampire folklore multi-deck study with my members, and so any deck that was representing vampires or based on vampire lore I was buying, and I bought this one as a consequence of that, even though it was supposed to come out in October, then it didn't, but in any case it's now here. And by looking at the images online, I was thinking, yeah, I've already seen this, it reminds me of that deck or that deck, I actually have that deck. Do I really want to spend money on something that I think I already know? But then I got it anyway because it was very affordable. I actually found it. If you're in Australia, it was available on Big W website and also in a few stores. I don't know whether it's still available for a very reasonable price, but in any case, as it so happens, very often with Blue Angel's deck, you can find them there at the store. If you're outside of Australia, I'm pretty sure that it's available in bookstores or online retailers. I was just looking through this deck when I got it, and I filmed an unboxing and I talked about it. I talked about the fact that we were doing this study of vampire folklore, and it was really interesting. And whilst I was looking at the images, I was thinking to myself, oh, well, yeah, I think I've already seen this. It reminds me so much of other decks that I've seen already, especially when it comes to Blue Angel's kind of oracle decks with this kind of atmosphere, you know, we've seen them, we see so many of them, and you know, it just take your pick. Then a few weeks ago I was talking about the energies of the week videos with my members, and I want to ask you for a recommendation for the new deck, because I change deck every month. And I was thinking about a healing deck, and I was requesting for a recommendation about a healing deck. Someone mentioned this one, and I thought to myself, is that really a healing deck? Because, you know, it talks about vampire, and it's true that it's Vampire Fae, but still vampire it is. And the images are quite dark, and so I thought I'd check it out for myself. And oh my God, I'm channeling my best Janice's impression, Janice from Friends. Oh my God, this deck is amazing. I mean, obviously, when you just look at the cards, you have a certain reaction. You think that you're starting to know the deck, and you do in a certain way. But let me just do a sample reading, because otherwise I don't think that I will be able to convey the surprise and the amazing grip that this deck has on pretty much anything. It is so relatable, it's unbelievable. It does have also, it shares something with the Le Vampire by Lucy Cavendish. You know, the guidebook from that oracle deck. It's got a very special kind of way of presenting the entries in the guidebook, in a way that is such, it's expressing this dialogue, it's communicating to you directly, and when you read out of the guidebook, it feels like you're having a conversation with a vampire. And the vampire, more often than not, is very judgmental towards human beings, because, okay, I'm saying that as a joke, but as a matter of fact, it does come across as a bit judgmental, because it's almost as if a vampire clan, a representative of a vampire clan, were looking into the ways of the humans and not understanding humans and pointing out all the flaws. But it's a really strong conversation. So this one doesn't come across as judgmental or not understanding of the ways of humans like the other one does, but it uses the same trick in conversation, as in it really engages you. So let me just pull a card, because I really think that you will be as surprised as I was the first time that I started pulling cards and reading out of the guidebook. So we've got here fresh air, for example. I don't know them all, so I still wanted to show you what the entry on the guidebook was. So obviously we got it here. Let a fresh breeze blow through. Clear the energy in your environment, bolster and refresh your aura. Lift your spirits, pay attention to beauty, and enjoy your life. Even the fiercest fairies must lighten up sometimes. Fine-tune your energy, spruce up your environment, and lovingly adorn and beautify your body to shift your energy for the better. Let me tell you, even this, which is supposed to be a sample reading, it hits so close to home that it actually makes me think that this card is for me. I have been so preoccupied with the shit that has been going on ever since the start of the year, and let me tell you, because having a channel and also being a tarot reader means that I'm in touch with a lot of people, and more than ever I'm receiving requests for private readings, because there's a lot of anxiety around, there's a lot of concern about how things are going and how jarring, and that is a word that I hear repeated over and over from many of my friends and my members. Jarring seems to be the adjective that is applied to 2026. And so when I pull this card, I'm so worried about all of these things, and pulling this card is a way to remind myself that sometimes we have to make beauty happen. We just can't rely on sitting back and waiting for it to come to us. And that is an advice that I give all of you. So I'm actually considering doing a little bit of a 2026 survival kit video for my members, because all of us can actually feel this kind of shift in energies, and it's very jarring, as I said. I highly recommend this deck, because I can assure you that each and every one of these cards will actually hit close to home. Protective veil, dark jewel, ask and know, Steadfast Protector, Assassin. Let me just read Assassin because it is mind-blowing. This is card number 47. It does have a fair bit of cards, so it's always nice to know that you will be able to pair it up nicely with the tarot deck if you so wish. As a matter of fact, this one pairs really nicely with Ian Daniels' Tarot of Vampires. Let me just show you quickly. So this is the deck that I'm talking about, the Tarot of Vampires by Ian Daniels. This is unfortunately out of print now. It's, even though it was a mass market deck. As a matter of fact, when we were doing the deck study, this was one of the decks that we were studying, but unfortunately, as I explained earlier, at the time this oracle was not available. So I promised I was going to read out of the Assassin card because it's actually mind-blowing. It takes you down a road you would not expect. Slay the saboteur. Kill the inner critic. Refuse to tolerate the detrimental internal voice. Move forward with masterful efficiency and don't look back. My husband would say I'm the harshest critic of myself, and I truly am. There is a voice within you that is not you. It is a voice of shame, fear, comparison, and self-loathing that you have internalized through your exposure to a disempowering relationship pattern or bogus cultural narrative. I mean, it doesn't pull any punches. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm not shying away from telling you the truth. And if I have to slap you in the face, I will. This is literally the attitude of this deck and the guidebook that corresponds. Really, really loving it. It feels like it's necessary. It also feels like it's one of those decks that it just doesn't stop from telling you the truth, and it doesn't coddle you, it doesn't protect you. It's definitely not one of those decks that I would call a hug deck. And I feel like we don't need one of those anymore. I feel like, at least in my collection, I have so many. By the way, love it when this happens. There is the same movement and the same position of the body in the two cards. So when these kind of things happen, this tells me that I probably should read this combination whenever I do this kind of readings and comparison and combos. So we've got, oh, this is a strong one. Light the Night with the Tower and Temperance. Light the night, so try to get a hold of that light that will guide you, and that will make you feel less lonely. Between the Tower and Temperance, obviously it is the healing power of Temperance. Whenever we're talking about Temperance, we talk about the fact that time heals things, but you also need to bring back the light into your life in order to be able to go through all of the trials and tribulation brought about by the Tower. So as you can see, it is a very powerful combo, very powerful. It's very chatty as well, but it's one of those conversations that you want to have by sitting down and not necessarily by standing by the water cooler and sipping on your cup of water. This is something incredibly powerful, and if you don't have this deck, it doesn't matter. There's a number of decks like the Dark Angels by Los Carabel that will pair up really nicely with this deck as well. And also I'm thinking some of Victoria Francis Oracle and Tarot deck still will pair up really nicely with this Oracle as well. So you don't necessarily need and try and find the Tarot Vampires by Ian Daniels. But if you can purchase this deck and you want to have this kind of a conversation in your practice, this is highly recommended. So another deck that I had the pleasure to spend a lot of time with is the Unveiled Tarot by Jesse Lonergan. We have done a complete now deck study of this deck. We've had so much fun with my members. I will have to say that studying a deck with members is the most amazing thing that we could do, because I really appreciate everyone's contribution to the cards. And because we also feel like we're in such a safe space that every one of us can actually say what they think about a specific card, even if they don't like it, but we can also have discussions and conversation and contribute to the general knowledge about the meaning of the cards, for example, or the way in which the author of this particular deck has chosen to represent these cards. I feel like we've come to the point in which I have learned so much more about this deck than I could possibly learn when I was doing a deck study by myself. And I think that from now on, I will try and sway all of my members to study all of the decks that I actually want to study. Obviously, I will listen to your inputs as well, because this is literally the best time I've ever had when doing such an amazing work with the deck. I have made available literally a book to my members that you can download and print out if you want, because I felt like there was so much to talk about this deck for each and every card that I posted 2 pages of insights per card. So obviously, you know, 78 cards. Actually, it's 80 because there's 2 additional cards, the Mob and the Puppeteer. My goodness, those 2 cards really powerful. And I feel like we kind of all agree on a few points. Obviously, it's not a perfect deck, but I wouldn't want it to be perfect. For example, there's a few cards that feel like we are in doubt on how to interpret them. Others kind of fall short of the mind-blowing effect that other cards have. Like, for example, all of the aces are a bit plain, but it doesn't matter. I mean, this is an amazing deck, so these are just things that I don't even consider as flaws. I'm just pointing them out. And I think now I want to talk about this card, okay? Because even with my members, we were like, I'm really scratching my head. I really don't understand what's behind this. And it was really lovely to receive everyone's feedback. So this is the 9 of Cups, and yes, whatever you think you're seeing. So in this card, there's obviously the inner frame and the outer frame. In the inner frame, someone is welcoming you into their humble home, and, you know, dressed very nicely in a suit and everything. And then you get in and you find out that, well, pretty much no one else is dressed up. They're always kind of in their birth suit, and they're engaged in activities in which you kind of need to be wearing your birth suit. And I'm not going to specify anything else, otherwise I'll be censored by YouTube. In any case, I cannot situate that. I cannot really understand what the meaning of the card is in regards to the 9 of Cups and the way that I always used to read it. But because of me being doubtful about this card, I received so many messages from my members that it was so much fun to have a look at this card and consider everything that was said. And I think that is actually one of the cards that I actually appreciate the most now, because I have so many people's idea on how to read it. And namely, I think we all agree on saying that sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for and not being too greedy and expecting too much, because that's not the end of a line. The end of a line is represented by sharing what you got, and so the 10 of Cups rather than the 9 of Cups. But I really love that opportunity to talk about it with others. So another deck that really shocked me, honestly, is the Find Your Magic Tarot, which is coincidentally the deck that we're studying now with my members. And the reason why I was shocked by it, it's because I've started doing the members readings with this deck. So whenever we study a deck, I always reach out to a few members asking them if that's okay, if I'm using the deck that we're currently studying. And generally speaking, these are decks that are really good for divination. Let me just say, my God, this deck is powerful. I had no idea, because until you use a deck and until you do some readings, like real life readings with a deck, it's just, I don't think that you have the full idea of what the deck can do for you. And this was a massive surprise. I always say this, I'm not a huge fan of 3,000 boxes there, but I understand this. It's I believe it's been picked up by US Games, but they kept the original format of the deck when it was published in Italian, because it is original Italian deck by Giulia Manzi and illustrated by Sarah Rottlish. So I'm really curious to know if anyone else has tried reading with this deck. Because honestly, you guys know me, I have a fairly large collection of decks, and even though I don't use all of them for readings, one of the criteria why I would want to buy a deck, especially if it's a mass market deck and not necessarily a collectible item, would be, will I use it for a reading? And if I do, how good is it going to be? This is crazy. Let me just, one thing is showing you the cards, and I'm sure that I've shown these cards a number of times already, or if you want, you can actually watch a walkthrough on pretty much any platform you want. But how many times do you actually see someone reading with it? I mean, I know that I'm not the only one reading cards, but there's a lot less people that do actual readings online. So let me just finish shuffling. And this deck feels like it's slightly larger in format than your typical full-size tarot deck. But it doesn't matter because this kind of semi-gloss cardstock makes it so that it's very easy to overhand shuffle and it fans out like a charm, like I like to say. So we're just gonna do a sample reading, and let's do a sample reading for the energies that I can expect in the next couple of weeks, if there's anything that I need to be aware of. And that's going to be it. As I always do, I always take a peek at the bottom of the deck, the card that is laying there, because in some ways it gives me an idea of the direction in which the reading might be going. Though I don't always read it, as I always say to my members when I do members readings, but sometimes, I would say 90% of the time I do. So it's a Three of Pentacles. This is obviously pointing to collaboration, finding your role in society, finding a way to make it matter, finding a way to make it so that you don't overlap or you don't overcome you know, what others are trying to do, and you respect their work as well. It's not just about collaboration, it's also about respecting others. And so let's have a look. Okay, the stress card, I totally get it. And so we've been sick, my husband and I don't know what we have. I don't know whether it's a new kind of flu that is around, I have no idea. But this is literally what you could see. If you were peeking in our house in the last couple of days, this is exactly what we've been through. And I love this card because I don't know if you can tell, maybe not, but let me just do this. Do you see this? This is a, I think it's a critter. It's possibly a squirrel or a badger or something like that. It could also be a little mouse like this one here. And basically it's sustaining the person's head, because you get to a point when you're sick, especially with the flu, that everything aches so much that even standing up to take the medication, it's a bit of a struggle. And then there's this fairy, let's say, that is giving the medication to the person that is sick. And then obviously there is a little mouse standing on top of their head with the thermometer. So obviously it points to a little bit of struggle. This year has been really, and I use this word again because I love it, jarring for so many of us. And this totally makes sense. But I also like that it comes out in the present position. So if there's anything I need to be aware of, I like to know that at least it recognizes my situation and it recognizes what we're going through. It's fine. So let's have a look at what the cause of this might be, and it's the Star card. So obviously I know that a lot of things that come to us as changes, they come to us because there needs to be change in our life. And I know that the Star card is always pointing out as some kind of a direction, a guidance. You know, you look at the star in the sky because you want to know where to go. That is the tradition of navigation, for example. I love this kind of specific because this is the little touch that one specific deck can bring to your specific reading. So if I were using a different deck, it wouldn't be about recovering. So there's still this element of being slightly sick, which I totally understand and it totally resonates. But there's also this idea of being accompanied by two majors, so the energies are really strong. And it tells me that there's been this movement, this idea of going through several different stages of being sick or having to deal with something jarring. And so there is a response here with the Strength card. Let's have a look at what, and the Three of Pentacles that we've seen at the bottom of the deck makes sense because everyone needs to contribute in order for the whole team, for the whole family to go forward. And let's have a look at what we've got here. The Six of Cups, look, I like it. It totally resonates with me. And as always at this point, the reading is so hitting so close to home that I was actually dreaming of my dad the other night and I woke up crying. It was tears of joy but tears of sadness at the same time because I miss him, and I feel like I've been deprived of the possibility to reconcile with him because obviously our relationship has been so difficult. It was very ill, mentally ill. He was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia with psychotic episodes. So obviously my entire life has been plagued with a lot of me being scared of him because, and it wasn't his fault, he was sick. So obviously it wasn't, I never felt like I was angry at him, and sometimes anger would have been kind of an output for my confusion. But I wasn't upset, or I might have been, but I was also rationally not, because I was understanding I was sick. So I feel like I would love to recuperate that kind of relationship that a daughter has with their dad. But obviously, because he's not with us anymore, that is not possible. However, somehow it still is, because I now have time to focus on the good memories and the times that he was spending with me before I was going to bed. And he was telling me all these stories that I love so much. About pirates, for example. So that was my most cherished memories of my dad, when he was telling me these stories at night time before I was going to bed. That is one of the most beautiful images that I will ever have about any kind of relationship I've ever had in my entire life. So I understand that in the next couple of weeks the struggle will still be there, but I also understand that I will find comfort and strength into these kind of memories, because the direction is the right one. So as you can see, it's an incredible deck. It really delivers the message in such a powerful way that I honestly think this is a great deck for divination, for reading for yourself, for others. There are decks that are part of my practice that I would never use like this, but this one is just incredibly straight to the point. It goes straight there, and like many other decks that we're going to talk about today, it doesn't pull punches. It really puts you in a situation in which you are in the right state of mind to receive that specific message. So yes, if you're struggling, by the way, I am doing this kind of 2026, as I said, survival kit videos, because I don't know what's actually I know what's happening. I know that there's a lot of planetary interferences and influences on our lives right now, and it's supposed to get better, but we're also going through Mercury retrograde, so I don't expect anything to change until at least the end of March. But we'll see what we can do. We need to support each other. That's the one time of the year in which we need to do that. And the next deck is the one exception to this video, in which I am so enthusiastic about talking about the decks that I got to know better. I just, let me just show you, because I think that is the best way to have a conversation. So I got gifted a number of Amazon gift cards for my birthday, and so one of the decks that was my most anticipated, 26 most anticipated decks for 2026 was the Oracle of the Undead, Guidance from the Grave. This is an Oracle deck that has just been released by Rockpool. However, I've seen plenty of people talking about it in the US already, so maybe Rockpool this time has released this deck first overseas and then in Australia. I'm not entirely sure. In any case, it's available now. This is by, it doesn't even tell you, and there's a reason. In any case, these zombies, life advice from the living dead. So far so good. These zombies have the lived experience and fortitude and the brains to inspire you in any situation, no matter how grave. When you channel a zombie as your guide, you can survive anything. And there's a whole horde call on in this deck. In this spooky oracle, Cunning Cadaver, Corpse Okay, that's the author, Corpse Okay, shares the wisdom of the undead with the world of the living. This is already a 36 cards deck, which is already a minus point for me. I would prefer an oracle deck to have at least 44 cards. I'm not the only one out there that thinks like that. I know that we all agree, or most of us agree, but that is not a deal breaker. You'll see what I mean by deal breaker. Beauty is only skin deep, but brains go all the way. I love this because it's actually very cheeky, but also very smart at the same time. So I will point out all of the pluses and all of the minuses, because I don't believe that this deck is just a loss. It's definitely not a victory. It's definitely a surprise in the sense that it's in the negative side. I expected a lot more out of this deck, but there are a few things that obviously will appeal to you, and so I will just talk about what I feel. If you disagree, of course, you have the right to disagree with everything that I'm saying. So we've got this at the back as well, which I actually quite like. I love the fact that you can see the bone here. I think that at that point we just listed one or two things that are positive out of this deck. These are the backs. So I don't like the bags, but again, this is very personal. So, you know, you might like them, you might love them. It doesn't really matter. My opinion doesn't really matter. The gilding is gorgeous. Love this. It's kind of blood tinted, so I really like it. And this is the guidebook. So obviously we've got the small thumbprint of the card we're talking about. Then we've got a warning. Then we got emotions. Then we got zombie, and then we got a message, and that's it. So we do have a differentiation when it comes to the information we be given, and that is always positive for me. I love it when I have different paragraphs and they're categorized in a different way. I love it when they give me the idea that I can read this deck in many different ways. I love that I can insert it into my practice. When they do this and the guidebook reflects that, it's a plus for me. However, and there's also a couple of spreads, but it's just a 1 and 3 cards. It's not that big a difference from what we see all the time. This one is pretty cool. Forecast spread, advice from the grave. I like that. The carnival one is rotting, then reborn, then gravestone and zombie. So we do have some customization of the spread, but then again, it doesn't necessarily feel like there's a massive effort in here, but I wasn't expecting so, because it is a very affordable deck, and I understand that if I want something more, sometimes I will probably have to look for more expensive products. That is not my biggest beef with this deck, and I think that at this point, if you've seen this deck in other channels or on TikTok or wherever, you will probably already know. You probably have already your own opinion about it, even if you don't have the deck. What I said at the beginning of this video is that I'm trying to be more open, and so even though I felt like this deck was going to be showing too much manipulation, I want to call it that way, I had no idea of the extent to which these cards actually feel fake. And please understand, it pains me to say this. A, I love the horror genre. B, I love zombie movies. I love zombie books, etc. There's one book which is about zombies, but it's actually very whimsical. It's called Warm Bodies, and I love that book so much. It's just that it could be about any kind of theme. The only thing that my eye keeps on seeing is AI. All of the cards, it's just so pronounced, it's so strong, it's so clear that and I think that there's no kind of intent or even trying to hide it, which is liberating in some way, in the sense that at least we're not being lied to, but at the same time, it is so predominant or everything else that it kind of takes away any kind of enjoyment. I have other decks that use AI in a very subtle way. I have other decks where the creators being so transparent about the way in which they use their creative process, and I kind of got on board with those creators because I understood what they were doing. In this one, it feels to me, and I might be completely wrong, and I don't want to be offensive to anyone, especially not to the creator, but it really feels to me like this is the work of a half an hour on Nano Banana or what have you, and that's it. In any case, it's such a pity because I actually really love the color contrast. I love the acid green, you know, paired up with the blues and pink and what have you, but it's just so clear. It is, you see here, for example, on the waves of this river and also on the corpse itself, it really feels like there's no effort from the human. And it really pains me to say this because I wanted to love this deck so much, because it's just, you know, look at this one, for example. This is so cool because, of course, it reminds me of Stephen King's The Shining. So whether you read the book or you watched the movie is actually really cool with Jack Nicholson. And these are the twins. So if you don't know much about the story, it's about a haunted hotel where some really bad stuff happened in the past. And basically there's this boy that plays in by just going around in the floors of the hotel. At a certain point is faced with two twins, and they're really creepy. However, even though I am reminded of that, and I'm happy that I'm reminded of that, at the same time I just cannot help it but feel like I'm looking at such a strong manipulation. And for example, here at the bottom, I would have loved for there to be maybe less of elements. I know that this is blood, I understand that. That's blood that is literally dripping off of them, their clothes or whatever. But at the same time, it feels like I'm taken for a ride somehow and not necessarily enjoying it. And I think that it would have been a much better deck had it not used AI to such an extent. Does that make sense? And again, I hope that we will keep the conversation you know, in a very respectful manner, because I always welcome talking about this, because it is a reality that it's part of our lives, whether we want it or not. Nowadays, for example, in Australia, unfortunately, there's a lot of veterinarians that use AI for diagnostics, even though it's technically not being regulated yet. So in many cases, you can ask for them not to do so if you prefer not to. And I'm very worried that some human doctors are starting to use that as well. So I'm very concerned that we may take a stance and say that we're against something and have the valid motivations, but at the same time we don't even realize how much of our lives are part of this kind of revolution already without us even realizing it. It's such a pity, but I honestly cannot say that I'm enjoying this deck. I'm not going to rehome it. I'm still this one reminds me so much, for example, of a card by that you can find in the Tarot Z by Alejandro Colucci, except that that one is real art. And but it reminds me so much of that one. And I'm kind of already, I know that I shouldn't be doing this because I have no knowledge whatsoever and I have no preparation, I don't know how precisely it works. And so I cannot claim to be in favor or against something if I don't really know it. But it makes me think, it looks so much like that card that it makes me think that it's kind of being modeled after it. And it's painful because that's one of my favorite decks. In any case, I bought this deck because, again, zombies love working with zombie kind of energy. And I don't feel like pairing it with anything. I don't feel like working with it. I don't even feel like doing a deep dive, as in reading the book. And I am asking you, so let's keep it respectful in the comments below, but would you work with this deck? That's my question to you, I guess. Now, I don't know if you remember, but recently I posted a video in which I was talking about I was doing an unboxing and it didn't go as planned because whilst ordering a deck that I was really anticipating receiving, I was very looking forward to having in my collection, I actually realized that I made a mistake at the last moment in the cart. And I ordered this deck instead, which is called the Faded Truth Tarot. It was a bit of a funny one because I realized whilst I was filming the unboxing that I actually truly liked it, and it was a serendipitous mistake in the sense that perhaps this deck, as many of you actually mentioned, meant to come my way and it was meant to be part of my collection because I realized that it has an incredible emotional impact on me. And after that, I started working with this deck every day, just 20 minutes, doing a reading or just going through the cards and reading the entries in the guidebook. And let me tell you this little guy made me emotional every time. It is an incredible deck, very deep, to the point that I honestly don't even look too much, I don't focus too much on the images. Because I don't want to use it for divination. I just use it for my own personal practice, and it's something that has been helping me in the last few days. So the Faded Truth Tarot, it was an amazing surprise, especially thanks to the guidebook, as I was saying. Some of these entries are very poignant, they're very deep, and they also really work. Whenever they want to deliver a message that is very specific, they really do so in a way that it's understandable and not too arcane or, let me say, obtruse, difficult, veiled. This is something very direct, and it doesn't shy away from being probably also using people's emotions to be even more powerful. So there are books sometimes that do that, or movies even better that do that. So they push it a little bit too much sometimes, but we kind of need it. By the way, there are two fools, and I chose to use the one with the lady, not necessarily because of gender, but because the lady looks in front of her and the man here looks back. So I thought to myself, I need to see what's around the corner, because these days are just really, really difficult. So I wanted to show you a pairing that I felt like I wanted to check out, and it works really well if I can find it. Here it is. So this is the Sacred Nature Oracle, and at the beginning I thought to myself, I want to pair these two up together simply because you know, sepia with sepia, so it's clearly sepia tone, and I thought maybe it would just pair up nicely. And then I didn't realize that the similarities are not just in the sepia tone but also in the vibes. So these two decks together share an incredibly strong emotional vibe, and that's literally the reason why they work so well. So when there's also elements that repeat themselves, but I'm not, as I was saying, I don't necessarily pay too much attention to the elements on the cards, but to the general vibes that I receive from the images. So we got resilience between the Page of Chalices and the Chariot. Obviously, you need resilience also in your initial stage of your journey through your heart. We got stability with the Emperor, which is literally the same. Stability could be a keyword to define the Emperor, but also the Lovers, because after the choice you need stability in order to build something, in order for that something you build to grow. And I love the fact that this image also reminds me a lot, because it looks like this person has a beard, as the Emperor on the tarot card. So, you know, engagement with the Four of Chalices and the Hierophant. The Four of Chalices, which is the Four of Cups, so the Four of Water, it's all about not getting engaged. So obviously there is this reminder of trying to get engaged, trying to set aside that sense of boredom, or also restlessness, ironically, that can come from the vibes of the Four of Water. And the Hierophant can also lead by showing the way, but also there is this sense of applying your past experiences in order for them to be teaching you how to face the future, which is creating continuity, that I really like, because it talks about engagement. Innocence with the Magician and the Knight of Pentacles. Integrity with the Empress and the Queen of Pentacles. Amazing, because the Empress and the Queen of Pentacles are basically a mirror image of each other. They expose to the world the secrets that the Empress may have, and not just the side of being nurturing like both of them do, but also the side of stability, grounding and integrity that they necessarily need to show. And the High Priestess with Tranquility and the Six of Chalices. I mean, we could go on forever. This is an incredibly powerful combo, but I just wanted to show you another deck that is really, really powerful together with this tarot. I cannot stop, because it's amazing, it's incredible, and I really love it when I can see also these kind of parallels in the images, like when the character in both the cards are looking in the same direction, they remind each other of something, they lead your gaze in one way or the other. So grounding with the Star, for example, these two are paired up together because they both look towards the left, but there's also this sense of peace. And at the same time, we like it because it's paired up with the Six of Pentacles, that tells us that there is that sense of grounding when you are giving as well as receiving. You're part of a bi-directional kind of energy and flow. So really amazing. You can do a lot of work with these two together. I really love what they're giving me and the experiences that I've had whilst going through the cards like this and actually reading for myself. I haven't used it to do any kind of members readings or clients readings. I don't think that I will until I know whether this deck is good or not for that. But for now, this deck has probably been the #1 deck that has been helping me going through some really terrible stuff that has been happening lately and is still happening. Ancestral wisdom with the 9 of Pentacles and the 7 of Swords. That tells us so much about the different way in which we should read the 7 of Swords. For example, acceptance between the 8 of Pentacles and the 5 of Swords as well. So there's also this idea of when you are in a situation where you cannot necessarily win, which is reflected by the 5 of Swords. One way to win is the acceptance, is accepting that it is what it is and moving on. And so, you know, doubling down on your work and just moving on. Don't get frozen because things are really terrible right now. That is one of the human reactions, and everyone has got that, you know, freezing when you see that something is so overwhelmingly negative. But things don't change if we just freeze. So we need to double down on what we're doing. If we know that the path we've taken is the right one, let's just go down. There was a saying, I think it's attributed to Churchill, and he was saying, if you're going through hell, keep going. Don't stop, don't freeze, you don't want to spend more time there, just keep going. Really amazing. But let me just show you a different deck that I paired up with this tarot deck. So the Oracle deck that I want to pair this tarot deck with is the Flowers of the Night Oracle by Sherilyn Darcy. This is also a mass market deck, and it's been printed a few years ago already by Rockpool. I believe it is still in print though. I don't think that there's a lot of Rockpool decks that are out of print, correct me if I'm wrong. But this deck with this tarot, oh my god. I mean, the combination between the images and also especially the keywords with the cards from the tarot is just uncanny. It's really, really shockingly good. So we got sensitivity between the Ace of Wands and the Four of Wands, and that brings you already to a different level of approaching the cards, I feel, because when we look at the Flowers of the Night, by the way, it's not just another botanical deck because I've got so many. This is very specific and it will always stay in my collection because it refers to flowers that only bloom at night. So obviously you have a different set of biology there already, or botanics. But at the same time, it refers to a certain human condition that only takes place at night. Whenever we feel like we are alone, imagine or visualize the Nine of Swords, for example, when you feel in that situation in which everything is overwhelming and you're the only one that is facing all these problems. But there is an invitation by looking at these elements and these flowers that indeed bloom at night or blossom at night, that you can actually make it through. So sensitivity in this case, think about the sensitivity as seen through the lens of the night light. You know, there is a sensitivity side to things that are obscure and dark as well. And so there is the sense of taking action with the Ace of Wands and also fulfilling this action and making it stable with the Four of Wands. And focus with the Page of Swords and the Three of Wands. Obviously the Page of Swords reminds you of always focusing, but it's lovely because there is a, I don't know what this is called because it's not binocular, because bi means two. So a monocular, I have no idea what this is called, but it's, this guy is literally looking through this looking glass, spyglass, something like that, in order to focus on things and see them better, because they want to expand their own horizon, and that is absolutely lovely to see it this way. The purpose between the Sun and the Eight of Swords. Find purpose, because if you only rely to the viral, the ephemeral, you know, it's never going to last long. And so if you do find purpose, you will find enough of that power that will release your chains and so on. It's such an amazing combo. It is very chatty, But at the same time, I feel like I'm saying this about many decks that I've talked about today. It is not a light kind of chat. It's something that goes very deep into the human psyche, and it also presents you with the possibility to understanding yourself a little bit more. And having the idea that there's still parts that are obscure to ourselves. And I think that one of the reasons why this deck works, the tarot deck I'm talking about, is also that we are offered this idea of images through a lens that distorts the colors in such a way that we see them only in, sepia tone. It's almost as if it were telling us that that's literally what we see, and there is so much more to that. But if we stop right there and consider what's in front of us, we'll be able to understand how to move on. If we keep on going without ever stopping, we won't be able to do that. I feel that, to me, that resonates a lot, because it's something that I've told myself many times. When I'm going through something difficult, for example, I remind myself that there's nothing wrong in taking a break and refocusing, just as long as you don't freeze. As I was saying earlier, if you're going through hell, don't keep going, don't stop, keep going. And that is an amazing saying for these times, because you wouldn't believe the amount of people that come to me, especially my members, but also others that request private readings, for example. And there's people going through so much lately. I know, as I said, I'm not an astrologer, but I do know a little bit about astrology. At least I read about it, and I know that there's a lot going on. Another deck that really was such a pleasant surprise. I absolutely loved it. I filmed that unboxing with my husband, in which we were actually engaged in a game, because my husband and I met traveling, and travel is something that really makes us happy, planning and traveling itself. And so, because I knew that this deck was released by Lonely Planet, was all about spots that you can visit in the world. So we made a list, and before looking at the cards, we made a list of possible cards of places we love, places we would love to go to, and places we thought that were on the card. I won, but not by much. It was so much fun, and I posted actually that video if you want to check it out. This is actually a very good tarot deck. I honestly didn't think it would be, because obviously it's a bit of a novelty. It's something that makes you think maybe it will show you a lot of places, but it will not always relate back to tarot. I didn't expect it to be so knowledgeable about tarot and tarot cards meanings. It's perfect. I was kind of shocked and pleasantly surprised by the amount of knowledge that has gone into creating the deck, and also associating the vibes and the atmosphere of these specific places with the meaning of the tarot cards. The guidebook is amazing. It's not huge, as you can see. It is on the thin side, but it gives you enough information for each one of the cards to understand how to relate to the place and the card itself. We were reading out of it for a couple of in a couple of cases with my husband as well, but then I had the opportunity to actually dive deeper into the deck, and I can assure you 100%. I would say that I agree on 90% of the cards, and that is actually a really high percentage, because if you've been following my channel for any length of time, you will know that I don't shy away from criticizing the knowledge, the tarot knowledge of the creator. In this case, I would not have, because this is not meant to be one of those decks that would teach you how to read tarot. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I actually recommend this to beginners. I probably don't. But if you love traveling and if you love tarot, just so you know, this is perfect. It's absolutely amazing. I really love it. It's spot on so many of these cards. And the very few that I don't necessarily agree with, they still give you a meaning to the card. It's not taken for granted, and it always makes sense, even though sometimes I would say that I don't necessarily agree, but it's okay, because I like to be challenged, and this deck is doing also that. So from some of these cards, it's actually challenging. I love the star with the blue lagoon, because of course it's got the northern lights, and you guys know me, I am a sucker for the northern lights. So this was all for today. I am very excited to hear what your opinion is about any of these decks, and as I always say, let me know in the comments below what you think, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!